Radio. Rahim here with Eddie Hearn in London, which may confuse some people because we didn't get our customary post-fight interview in New York.
Were you there?
Oh, stop it.
I honestly didn't see you.
Are you serious?
No, I didn't see you.
You know, that hurts a little bit, but the fight was
Oh, no,
so
I did.
short.
Hold on, did we do one at the press conference?
Yeah, of course we
Oh,
did.
mate, I'm all over the place.
Oh, I thought you meant maybe on fight night you didn't
No,
see me. You don't even
no,
remember.
Mate, I'm just, at the moment, I'm like a machine that you just roll out to places. Do you know what I mean?
The
within
$6 billion man.
Yeah, but because the business has grown so much, literally, they're like, Eddie, Canary Wolf for the workout, and I'm like, okay. I was on the tube this morning, just like wandering around, thinking, where am I going now? And then after Saturday, it's like, Eddie, you have a couple of weeks rest, then Madison Square. Okay, go. I'm just like a walking mute at the moment.
I wonder do they put
event to event
the programs right here in the neck? Because I haven't seen your neck in about a month.
Yeah, it's under there. It's just got a little chip in it that program me.
Weird.
Whyte Chisora this week. Okay, here we are, Whyte Chisora. You know, and then I'll get home at night and just go take it out.
Get ready for the internet clone conspiracy to begin. But main business here, listen, Rocky fielding, Canelo, we've got to sum that up a bit. So obviously I was ringside with you when you didn't notice, and there was two broadcasts going on, right? DAZN, Sky Sports. DAZN seemed to at least felt more like an American broadcast. And there was a bit of controversy, maybe that's a strong word, but discussion about the difference in how the fight was called.
Right.
So we heard Adam Smith talking about how brave Rocky was and the effort that he put forth. And then in the American broadcast, it was like, oh, this is just, this is a mauling. Where did you come down? Like, how did you feel about his performance?
My opinion was that he was completely outclassed. He was probably overwhelmed. He was incredibly brave, but he wasn't good enough. Not because he performed poorly, just because it was a world-class fighter in with a pound-for-pound number one. So, the chances that Rocky had in his fight was to use his size and power, which he couldn't even do because Canelo just walked him down and beat him up. So he made mistakes because he sat on the ropes, and you can't do that if you're trying to use your size, and that wasn't part of the game plan. But say he was overwhelmed by the occasion, but I'll tell you what, I was nearly overwhelmed by the occasion. I mean, it was sensational. Like, that venue is just the one, and the atmosphere with the Mexicans was incredible. And I think sometimes it's difficult. I mean, when you're that kind of underdog anyway, and you sort of walk out, and you're sort of like, and in the ring, I always look at the fighter and try and one of my concerns was that he was like, Buffer's introducing him and almost like the bell goes and the legs are stiff and you come out and it's hard. It's a hard game, both to fight mentally, emotionally, to deal with all this sort of stuff. Canelo just bowls in like it's just another day of the week, and that's because he's used to that sign of occasion. So I thought Rocky was very brave. He kept getting up. He would have kept going, but the ref was right. He was taking too much punishment, particularly to the body, and Canelo was too good. No shame. Again, you get the people who say, should Rocky have taken that fight? It's like, come on, man, what are you going to do? You win a world title, you get offered the chance to fight Canelo at Madison Square Gardens for a load of money. It's like, what are you going to say? No. So we always knew that Canelo was going to be too good for him, but you hope in a fight that you can get lucky, or you can use your size, or you can use your power, but all those things didn't really matter because one, Canelo was a lot stronger at 168 than probably was anticipated, and two, he was too good. So I don't really think you have to overanalyze it too much, rather just say Canelo was too good.
At the top of the interview, we joked about how many events you have to cover, how much you have on your plate, and the boxing world getting smaller, which by my estimation is a good thing. That means there's more platforms, the world's coming together from different regions, but a word you like to use is world boxing, and guys who are world boxing class as opposed to guys who are domestic, regional to their wherever they're from. Is Rocky fielding, not personally, but an example of what we might see interacting domestic champions, which he can't be taken. That can't be taken from him on a global stage.
He's a world-class super middleweight. Personally, I mean, he went to Germany. He beat Zoiger, who everybody else called a world-class super middleweight. until Rocky beat him, and then some people say, well, hang on a minute, but Rocky went there to Germany and stopped him in his backyard. That was a world-class performance. But there's a big difference between world-class and elite pound-for-pound class, you know, and you see that in loads of different fights. I mean, Bellew said it himself. He said that was the difference between a world-class fighter and an elite pound-for-pound great. That's what Bellew said, which I thought was very critical, but you see it, you know, time and time again in different kind of fights. Particularly, I mean, you saw it. I'll give you some other examples. Anthony Crolla against Linares. You saw a world-class fighter in Crolla against an elite fighter in Jorge Linares. You know, it's no disgrace, and sometimes the margins are quite small. The Crolla fight, the first fight, was quite close, but some guys are simply too good. You know, Lomachenko's a good example. Usyk's a good example. Canelo's a good example. And it's only when those pound-for-pound greats fight each other that they're going to get competition. Canelo against Danny Jacobs. Canelo against Golovkin. These are competitive fights that can go either way. But there aren't many of them at that level, you know? Like, who else in the middleweight division is going to give Canelo a great fight? Andrade, Jacobs, Golovkin. Who else? Maybe Billy Joe. But there aren't many. You know, to make 3 or 4 fights is quite difficult to get certain fights over the line. So you're sometimes going to see the fights where you get an elite pound-for-pound fighter against a world-class fighter. You saw it in the Katie Taylor fight. Eva Wallström was a world champion. She's undefeated in 26 fights. Katie Taylor is a unified world champion. Wallström didn't win a second of a round. You know? So there you're talking about world-class and a pound-for-pound great. So, you know, greatness is something that comes to few, and greatness is tough to beat.
We saw, to your point, Danny Jacobs in the ring after Canelo. When I saw him climb the ring, I was like, uh-oh, here we go. I thought we were going to see some antics post-fight.
Danny's not really like that. I mean, it was a tough one, actually, because I said, like, I have a lot of respect for Golden Boy, and I have a lot of respect for Canelo, particularly. And I said, Danny was like, what should we do? Like, this is when the fight ended. And obviously, I've got Rocky as well. So I don't want to, like, steam in with Danny and go, excuse me, Rocky. That'd be a real Don King moment, you know? But I thought, look, obviously, we've got to make sure Rocky's okay, which he, you know, he was fine. But I wanted to also do my bit for Danny to say, we're here, and I think this is the fight. So I got in the ring, saw Rocky, blah, 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 and I went up to Eric Gomez because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't being disrespectful. I didn't want Danny just to steam in it, and that's not his style anyway. So I said to Eric Gomez, do you mind if I get Danny Jacobs in the ring? And he looked at me as if to say, don't fuck about, excuse my language. And I said, I promise you, you got my word. There'll be no, he said, okay, fine. Got Danny in the ring. And we just stood back, you know, like waiting for an interview, didn't do anything. And Canelo actually looked across the ring and saw Danny and walked over, shook his hand. Canelo shook hands as well. So Canelo shook hands with Danny. And I just said to him, guys, you're two amazing fighters. The unification, this is it, this is the fight. And they both sort of said, yeah. I mean, it is the fight. It is the next fight. And I believe Canelo wants it. I know DAZN want it. I think when you talk, I see recent polls and stuff like that, there's 2 fights, Gennady Golovkin and Danny Jacobs. And ultimately, if he can box both of those guys in the year, you have to give Canelo massive credit, because that's a tough year, you know. But also, I think he got an easier fight at the weekend against Rocky Fielding, so he'll be ready to go into a proper fight in Cinco de Mayo.
You've also got Andrade, and Triple G still looking for a home with the dissolution of HBO. I know he's not looking for a promoter per se, but you being so tied close in with DAZN and that kind of making sense for him to be there, is that a kind of thing you would reach out for, a deal you would try to make happen?
Yeah, for sure. You know, we've spoken to Gennady, and he's going to talk to everybody to look at the landscape and the best deal for him. We know that obviously if he goes with another promoter or in another platform, he can't get the Canelo fight. But it comes down to how much does he want the Canelo fight? Does he feel like he needs that? Does he want it? And knowing Gennady, he is the ultimate competitor. So I believe deep down in his heart, he's only interested in the Canelo fight. So if that's the case, then I would expect him to join the DAZN platform. But if the deal's not right, maybe he won't. So everybody's, I mean, you know, Rahim, the boxing world has gone absolutely mental. There has never been a better time to be a fighter, right? But I want to be a manager. That's what I want. Because on Saturday night, although I was co-promoter, you know, I had 3 fights on the card, but I was like a manager. So I was in the changing room of the fighters. You do the deal for them to fight. You turn up. You've got no responsibilities. You've got no risk. Yeah. You've got no aggravation. And most of the time, the managers make more than the promoters anyway. So what a time to be a manager, because you've got all these different platforms overpaying fighters. And I think overpaying, I don't necessarily like to use that term because fighters deserve every penny they get, but the purses are so far from reality that it won't last. So you go through these periods in boxing, and we had one 3 years ago with the PBC, and I was on the other end. I didn't have the money. PBC came in and said, right, what were you making? $1 million? I'll give you 3 million. And the other promoters were like, oh, and you have to step up. You have no choice. If you want to be a player, if you want to be a world player, you've got to step up with the levels, because they've changed the market, and that's what we've done with DAZN. And Top Rank and Al Heyman have had to come with us, and it becomes a war of attrition of who can outlast who, and it's almost like Formula One.
Yeah.
In that sometimes it's not about how good you are, it's about the car you're driving, you know?
Well,
which takes a little bit of fun out of it, because really, I believe I'm the best promoter in the world. So if it's all on an even playing field, then I believe I win. But if someone's got more money than us, or someone says, oh, we've got a much bigger platform for exposure, all this bollocks, then it's skew-if. But that's what it's like at the moment. And it's ultra competitive, and like I said, the money's gone mad, but it won't last, because at some point someone will go broke, or someone will look at the business and go, we can't sustain this, because when the market is wrong in terms of the price, etc., then it has to stop. But great for the fighters, milk it while you can.
Well, the era that you talked about 3 years ago with PBC, it was great for the boxers.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they made the money that they did, but the promoters clammed up. They tightened up, and they used their power to isolate their respective camps.
But also, it led to the inactivity of fighters, because the money was wrong. So if I'm giving you 3 million a fight and you're worth 1.5, I'm only going to box you once a year because you're too expensive. Do you know what I mean? So I would rather say to a fighter, I'll give you 2 million a fight, but I'll box you 3 times a year. And you're going to make more money than you would boxing once a year for 3 million. But sometimes they can't digest that, but that's what happened.
But is the atmosphere now, even though the money's big again, there seems to be more platforms, promoters are doing better. Is it a situation where this might actually bring fights to the fans that they want to see? Because in that era, it was a lot of complaint that we couldn't get the matchup because nobody wanted to work with anybody.
But another problem is that people are being overpaid for poor matchups, right? So when, and like Golovkin might be an example where you'll say, we're going to offer you X to fight a comeback fight, or a standard middleweight fight. So if that's what they're getting for that, what are they going to want for Canelo? Do you know what I mean? So that's where that problem happens. And I think I have no problem paying massive money to fighters, but it's got to be a fight that has massive interest, because otherwise, where's the money coming from? You know, where's the gate being generated? I mean, very few fighters can do what Canelo did, which is set out Madison Square Garden in a fight where they're a massive odds-on favourite. You know, and it's interesting. It's interesting. It won't, it won't and can't last, but everyone's going for it. Everyone's going for it. No one's backing down.
How does Al Heyman's deal with ITV change the landscape on this pawn?
Not a great deal. I mean, we have our 16 shows with Sky. I think their shows are going to be a mixture of mainly US shows, sprinkling a couple of UK, do a few pay-per-views, De Gale against Eubank, will be probably one of them. I don't think Al has the infrastructure or the desire to do too much here, but I think it's a natural extension of the PBC brand. A bit like what we're doing is a natural extension of the Matchroom brand. Italy, Germany, Canada, USA, and I think that's what they'll do in other territories as well. I think the PBC will follow suit with us in what terms of what we're doing, because we have the same kind of ambition, which is to be a global brand for boxing. So, you know, the PBC are a good brand. Al Heyman is a very bright individual. I don't know their financial situation, but they're very, very aggressive, and I don't know where the money's coming from, but who knows what's going to happen. Literally, like, it's a very volatile market where the numbers don't add up, which is a very dangerous place to be. And I don't know where it will go or where it will end or when it will end. So literally, the mentality is you go fight by fight, show by show, and you just, you know, when I say bank, I don't mean the money. I mean you bank the show. So done. That one's done. On to the next one. Another one banked. Another one banked, because, you know, like I say, anything could happen. This is going to be a good fight, Tom Little against David Price. A lot of people say, you know,
Yeah, well, I mean, David Price.
yeah, but he can fight, and what he does. A lot of people talk about Tom. People talking about Tom Little, by the way.
Yeah.
You get these guys who go into fights on 2 or 3 weeks' notice, and they go in with guys like Hrgovic, right, and people like that who are serious fighters with no training camp, with no sparring. And they end up, and Dubois he went in with as well, and they end up doing well. I mean, 5-6 rounds and fairly competitive. And then all of a sudden you get an opportunity where you get 8 weeks against a guy like David Price, and actually looking at him there, I mean, I know pads don't hit back, but he's fast, and I think he's going to be a nightmare for David Price. I really do.
Yeah, well, a lot of people think that David Price, you know, might be past it. Like, what?
Well,
Is it dangerous?
He's had a lot of bad knockouts, but against some good fighters. I mean, Kuzmin fight was a good performance. He just gassed out.
But these knockouts are
But-
hellacious. Like, at what point is it like, okay?
I think the point is when you get beaten by a fighter that is not world class. Do you know what I mean? There's one of them. So if Price gets beat on Saturday, he should jack it in 1,000,000%. Because it's not like going, I boxed Povetkin. Do you know what I mean? He's fighting a guy that couldn't win a British title, really. I think he's good enough to, but hasn't been at that level. So, and David won't want to carry on if he gets beat on Saturday. So I just love heavyweight fights, especially when both guys can punch, and he's got speed, and Price hits. Price is probably still the single hardest puncher in the heavyweight division.
All the fighters we've talked about, Canelo's great, Lomachenko's fantastic. You know, obviously Triple G is a fan favorite, but nothing compares to heavyweight boxing. That's been proven time and again. You know, obviously a couple of weeks ago we had a big heavyweight fight, and now we have a big heavyweight fight coming this Saturday. I talked to Dillian last night, and 3 years ago, the time we were referencing, when I was over here, people were slagging off America. We don't need the American market, it doesn't matter. You said the same. But now, guys are itching to go over there and prove themselves in the States, not just for the money, but for the prestige of, like you say, world boxing proving. That's America's still a proving ground.
I think that's always been the case, but 3 years ago, I don't think there was the money in America. I mean, after the PBC decline, the money wasn't really there. In fact, the money still, for the big fights at Dillian's level, is in the UK. Like the money he made from Parker and the money he'll make from Chisora, he couldn't make that kind of money in America unless he was fighting Wilder or, you know, or Wilder, basically. Yeah. So, but there is, I mean, look, we was at Madison Square Garden on Saturday and AJ was going, I like this, you know what I mean? And I think part of AJ as well is, and for a much, much smaller level, I quite like it as well, that we're quite unknown in America. AJ a lot more known than me. Sure. He got a great reception, but there isn't the same mentality in America where you're walking up and down Times Square, people aren't coming up to you going, I mean, a few people will walk past him and go, is that boxer? But over here, he can't move anywhere. And even fat old me, you know, everyone knows who I am. They watch your videos, they watch Coogan's video. Like,
Right.
But in America, it's actually quite nice. Like, I was at the show on Saturday. Most people in there know who I am. Half of them have no interest in me, and the other half think, is that guy from the UK? I'm not really sure.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, he kind of went under the radar last week, and he was able to be normal again. You know, he was on the tube. You know, he was walking about in the buses. He loved that, you know, because he's not able to just go to the coffee shop with his pals and have a laugh, and without someone sitting there asking for 1 million photos or filming him from the distance, you know. So I think he sort of looked at that and went, I'd like to fight him, you know. And I think 2019, you will see his American debut.
What makes more sense for Joshua? Do you go to America at some point in 19 and maybe fight a Big Baby Miller who will bring people and gives you some American spotlight? Or is it better to be over here and maybe fight the winner of Chisora Whyte? And it's a huge fight here, either one.
I think that basically when you look at it, the ultimate fight and the only fight that Joshua really wants next is Deontay Wilder. But it's kind of in Wilder's hands in that if he won't fight Joshua, there's nothing we can do. And I'm not saying he's scared, and but he either wants to fight him and become undisputed, or he doesn't. So if he doesn't, we can't do anything. We could try and fight Fury, but they'll probably fight each other. We could fight the winner of this fight, or we could fight Jarrell Miller in America. If we went to America, the guy is Jarrell Miller in New York, fighting a loudmouth New Yorker in his back garden on your American debut. That's the fight. But there's lots of things that have got to happen. I think in Joshua's mind, he still wants to fight Dillian Whyte because he wants to knock him out properly. But who knows what could happen? Dillian Whyte could lose on Saturday. Dillian Whyte could win by first round knockout and say, I want 50-50. Like a lot of people are, you know? Right. So it's one thing wanting the fight, it's another thing pricing yourself out of the fight. We don't disrespect people with the offers, we just know the numbers. No, we got the Klitschko fight done when Joshua was not unknown, but Klitschko's very difficult to do business with. We done that. We got another unification fight made with Joseph Parker. We got a mandatory made on 10 days' notice with Carlos Takam. We got the Povetkin fight made without having to go to Russia or without having to have a purse bid. We do good business, but some people are impossible to do business with, or at least impossible to even talk to. We hope now that Wilder will step up to the plate and say, okay, let's sit down and talk. If we can't make it, we can't make it. But if you don't even want to talk about it, you can't sit there and slag Anthony Joshua off for not fighting Wilder, because he went to America, he went to the media and says, I am here. We will do 2 fights, one in the UK, one in America. You know, 2 of the biggest fights of 2019 to decide the undisputed heavyweight champion. This is legacy, this is history, this is everything, should be everything to a fighter. You know, I was talking to Maurice Hooker the other day and he's like, oh man, I just want to be unified, I want to be undisputed. That's like every fighter's dream, you know? Right. So we'll see.
It seems unlikely that you get them out of that rematch idea. They're keen to it.
That's a big fight. But it's not as big as the Joshua fight, and it doesn't carry the mantle of undisputed heavyweight world champion.
So with it said, you guys want the Wilder fight. You're doing everything you can. Let's just take that as a stipulation. But for whatever reason, doesn't happen. What position is the winner of Whyte Chisora in? Is that the primary,
I think Joshua's never looked at the Chisora fight and said, I want to fight Chisora. Chisora was Joshua's hero coming through. He's a Finchley boy. He was the guy in the big fights. He was the heavyweight British champion. So he's not mad on that fight. But listen, if it's there and it's a big fight, he would take it. Whyte is in a very good position if he wins. That's almost certainly the fight if we can't make Wilder or Fury.
We've seen Chisora go through something of a transformation professionally. David Haye is working with him now. He seems more fit than he's been. Even in training, he seems more fit in training than I've seen him in the ring. Mentally, he seems a bit calmer, even with the unusual analogies. by your estimation, is this Chisora that we're going to see Saturday night different from the one we've seen before? Is he better? Is this fight, can this fight even get better?
He's physically better. I think he's mentally better. At what point, do you become war-torn? I thought he was, and then he went and produced that against Takam, which was probably one of the best performances, best wins I've ever seen. Under Hay, there's a lot of things that will definitely be better. Number one is his fitness. Yeah. Number two is his technique, because he would have worked harder with Hay and with the trainer, Don Charles. Number three is his mental state, because before he was a drifter, So he'd do a few days and then he might say, I'm just going to have a couple of days out, having some nice lunches. Hay has had him in lockup for this fight. So we will definitely get the best Chisora you can possibly get at this moment in time. Do you know what I mean? For Dillian, but a lot of people say to me, yeah, but Chisora might be war-torn. He had a tough fight last time out. Did you watch the Parker fight? Watch the 12th round of the Parker fight. Dillian was out. It was a mixture of he was buzzed and he was exhausted. 10 more seconds, he probably would have lost that fight. So he weren't in the easiest of fights. And he has had the Joshua fight. He has had the Chisora 1 fight. He's had tough fights. So you've got to say Whyte's fresher. But and Whyte is the favourite. But it does worry me. Chisora worries me, because he's not all there. He's not your average guy. He don't know when to stop, does he? That's the thing with Del. And against Takam, I was watching it going, do you know what? I think the corner should pull him out. He's taking too much punishment. This isn't good to see. He soaked it up and then he knocked Carlos Takam spark out. He doesn't know. He's got no quit in him. And when there's pride involved, when he don't fancy it and he can't really be bothered, when he boxed in Monaco against Kiarble, sort of turned up, I'm looking at him going, what am I watching here? Then you look at him against Takam and you think, how have you produced that performance? It's just in here and in here, where he goes, do you know what? I'm having a tear up and you ain't going to beat me. Can Whyte stop Chisora? I'm not so sure. But if they keep hitting each other like they hit each other in the first fight, and I believe they will, someone's going to go this time. You can't keep trading up left hooks and hitting each other flush on the chin like 20 times in a row. And no one went down in the first fight.
Right.
Let alone get stopped. No one went down. So
ahead of this fight of the year.
It will, and I believe this fight, when you look at how a fight will play out, how can this fight play out in any other way than a classic? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but what's Chisora going to do? He ain't going to box, is he? He's going to go seconds out, round one. He's going to be here, whoom. And Whyte will probably want to keep it long and try and box him. He won't be able to. And Whyte's got too much of this and too much of this, where he's going to go, do you know what? Fuck it. And they're going to go at it again. And it's a dangerous fight, because Whyte has it all at his feet. And this is what Chisora keeps goading him with. He says, why are you fighting me, bruv? You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to. You're number one in the WBC, you're top 5. You got the shot. And you're gambling on me because you think I'm a payday. And it's like, he's right. Dillian is gambling everything to be in a sick fight that the fans want, and ultimately he wants, because he's a sick fucker as well. And both these guys are sick fuckers. You've got to be to want to do that again, haven't you? Yeah. Watch that first fight back and say, why would you want to do that again?
Yeah, well, I can't cast aspersions on them, because I might be the sickest fucker. I watched that fight over and over again, and I can't wait to see this one. But lastly, Eddie, at the end of the year, I like to look forward, not back. And I'm curious, prediction-wise, every year in boxing this happens. There's never been a year when everything has stayed static on January to December. So, the top 5, who do you feel breaks into the top 5 in 2019, who's not there currently? And whose spot are they taking? Who's fallen out of the top 5? Who is there currently?
Talk about pound for pound?
Yeah.
Well, I think that Joshua's not in the pound for pound top 5, and I think he will be there. I think that, who else do I rate highly? I think one of the light heavyweights are going to emerge.
Hmm.
My bet is Bivol or Beterbiev. because I think at some point they're going to fight each other, and I think those guys are going to come through. I think Callum Smith is only one big win away from certainly emerging in the top 10 pound for pound guys. I just think you're going to see a lot of defining fights. Who's going to drop out of the pound for pound list? I mean, who are we saying is in the pound for pound list? Loma, Usyk, Crawford, Garcia, Spence, Golovkin.
Yeah. I'll give you the top 10. I won't make it too tight. Out of the top 10, all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the guys that are getting a little bit older. I mean, Mikey Garcia, I believe, gets beat by Errol Spence, and might slip a little bit. Golovkin is still amazing, but he's definitely coming to the back end of his career. A lot of the guys in the, and then you've got the younger generation coming through. A lot of good young fighters in America, and it's all up for grabs, because I like the times when I believe Joshua Whyte can be a pound for pound top 10, top 5 guy, but I can't really say that because he ain't boxed anyone yet. But a lot of those guys, and that's why I'm really excited about the new season in the UK, because a lot of those guys are going to get thrown in those positions. Buatsi, Josh Kelly, Ted Cheeseman, Fowler, where we get to find out, are they just Matchroom hype jobs? Or can they really fight? I believe they can really fight. But not everybody. When you look at the last cycle, everyone gets to British level, but how many go on to world level? Well, of the last cycle, Calify, Anthony Joshua, and Callum Smith. They're the guys who basically went on to become world champions from the Olympic team. This time around, there's other guys, Scotty Cardle, British champion. Gamal Yafai, Commonwealth champion. Martin Ward, British Commonwealth European champion. So we know they can get to that level. How many can get to world level? And this time around with the Rio guys, Fowler, Buatsi, Akoli, Kelly, Ashfaq, all these guys we signed, some will get to British level, some will get to world level. But I really enjoy finding out, because we make sure that we give them the opportunities, and at the end of it they can turn around and go, I wasn't good enough. Not, oh, my promoter fucked up, or I wasn't given the right opportunities or the right path. Just I wasn't good enough. And as an individual, especially a sportsman, there's no shame in saying I gave it everything, but I wasn't good enough. So that's really our plan with Matchroom, is to make sure we lay the foundations and put out the path for you, and we'll help you get there easily, but you've got to win. And when I say easily, as in there'll be no disruptions. You've just got to keep winning. And if you do that, you will become world champion.
Well, as an objective and obsessive observer, I have to commend you as a promoter who has given the fans the opportunity to see the type of guys that you're talking about, bring the world boxing community together, and see the matchups that we'd like. You are a promoter that is willing to put guys in the ring with other promoters, and that's such a big deal. I want 2019 to be like that across the board.
I would just say on that that's what we always want. It's not always possible for a variety of reasons. Might be that a trainer doesn't like a fight, or might be that the manager wants to go somewhere else, or wants more money, or silly money, or the network don't want to pay the money for that fight. So in an ideal world, and I feel like every promoter, every fighter and every fan honestly want the same thing. Sometimes it don't make sense. You can't, it's like this 50-50 thing with Joshua. You get some people who go, just take the 50-50. It don't work like that, mate. I wouldn't tell you to go to work for $5,000 an hour, or $5,000 a year, sorry, $5,000 an hour, and you go, I ain't taking that. And I go, go on, mate. He wants you to. Go on. No, it's my fucking job. It's my livelihood. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you've got to get the right deal, but you've also got to be willing to manoeuvre and negotiate, and understand that in order to achieve greatness, sometimes you have to do things that you might want to do, not want to do, and that might be taking 5% less or stuff like that. So,
So yeah,
we're always trying to make the best fights. I'm a fan.
Right, and you're not the only one. There's other promoters as well, but like I say, 3 years ago, it was really tight, and it was, I don't think, good for the fans. And now I hope you and other promoters come together, keep that mentality, keep that sentiment going for 2019. It's been a wonderful 2018 year. We've got one more great fight ahead of us this Saturday night. Can't wait for Chisora Whyte. Thank you, Eddie Hearn, for a great year, and we'll see you Saturday night, Radio Rahim with Eddie Hearn.